All right, ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your butts because the next couple of years is going to be a wild, wild ride. We are facing an economical and societal collapse in America. That's what we keep hearing, right? Is it true, though? Is it true, or are we just falling for it? Let's talk about it, because I think this is a very important topic. As a matter of fact, this is probably the most important topic of our generation, because if you listen to all the stuff going on around us, that is exactly what's happening. And I mean, is it really going to get that crazy? Are we actually going to live through the collapse of America? I think about this a lot, because the more I keep seeing, and I'm talking like people that kind of are in the know, people that have been following trends about the economy and what's going on in the world. And there's a lot of people telling us that the next 10 years or so are going to look pretty dark for America, and that we might actually be on the verge of America as we know it completely changing, and essentially the fall of an empire. So let's talk about the facts that we know, the things that are causing this, the things that are contributing to this. First thing, cost of living. The cost of everything is going up. That is a fact. Wages are not. That is also a fact. And I went back and I looked up the average cost of a house and the average salary in 1970, adjusted for inflation, of course. And then I compared that to today, and what I found was pretty shocking, because the average price of a house was about $200 and some thousand. The average salary was, I think, $77,000, somewhere around there. And today, the average salary has actually decreased, and the average cost of a house was over $500 and some thousand. That is not a good thing at all, and it means we're being priced out of homes, but that's not the only thing we're being priced out of. We're also being priced out of food, because the cost of food keeps going up, and specifically healthy food. And when you're not able to buy as much healthy food and proper food, it means your health is probably also going to suffer. And that's another big thing that has gone up, that is medical expenses. Being sick in America is very, very expensive. And the fact of the matter is, most people are sick. Most people are suffering from at least one chronic condition, and most people are on at least one type of pharmaceutical. Not a good thing, because you also have to buy insurance, medical insurance, and medical insurance is, number one, a huge scam, but it's also very, very expensive in America. So long story short, being sick in America and having to deal with anything healthcare is going to be very costly. And overall, to sum this up, the cost of living in America has skyrocketed. And again, wages have not kept up, so people are struggling to make ends meet. It is very hard to get by in America, especially if you conform to the typical idea of the way people should live in America, and that is basically being a consumer. It's a renter's subscription-based society. Everybody has to trade up. They have to have the next nicest, newest thing. They have to have 15 different streaming services, and all these things. Everything is just based around materialistic crap and being a consumer. And when you have all these things that you're paying for, you're going to be bleeding money 24/7, and that is going to make it very hard to get by in America. And another thing that is playing a major part in the potential downfall of society as we know it is all the division that is being sown in our daily lives. Us as Americans, we are more divided now than I would say that we probably have ever been. And I would say that's all by design, because when you think about why all this division starts and where it stems from, it's not really coming from us. It's these ideas that we're fed. It's this inception. It's the seed that has been planted into our minds, and the bad part about that is that we've all fallen for it. Hook, line, and sinker. We're divided over pretty much everything that we can possibly be divided on, and it is very difficult for us to unite and come together over pretty much anything. And that's a bad thing, because when you look back through history, all of the civilizations that have collapsed, a lot of the times they are very, very divided, and that is one of the things that eventually led to their downfall. And with division, you also have a negative impact to relationships in general. And that's a very bad thing, because now men and women are pitted against each other. They can't get along, and they're kind of going their own ways. They're not getting into relationships, which is causing a decline in the population. And that's not good, because there are also other factors that tie into that. For example, our fertility rate is also declining. So when you have a declining fertility rate and men and women not getting together and not being in relationships and not having kids and starting families, the population could eventually collapse. There could eventually, in the very near future, be much fewer people in America, and I would say in the world in general. And when it comes to the declining fertility rate, there are a lot of factors that play into that. Namely, it is food. Our food is basically toxic. All the stuff they put in food is destroying our endocrine systems. It's wrecking our metabolic health. and it's wrecking our hormones. And also all the toxins and chemicals that we're exposed to in our daily lives is also playing a major role into that. And some people might think that a declining population is a good thing because there's a narrative out there that says that we're overpopulated. But if you don't have enough people to maintain the infrastructure and to maintain a functioning society, that could eventually lead to society collapsing. And another thing that could lead to societal collapse is social media, the internet, all of this stuff that is taking over our daily lives. It could eventually lead us there. And if you think about what social media and the internet's doing to us, it's not hard to see why. It is causing us to withdraw from society, because instead of going out and talking to people and interacting and socializing like we used to do, we now stay stuck in this digital realm. We don't go out and socialize in the same way that we used to. And that ties into all the stuff that we just talked about, because that's fewer relationships. That's more division. That is more people being sedentary and not exercising their minds, which leads to poor health and poor mental health and the overall decline of society in general, because without people socializing and interacting and sharing knowledge and being cordial with one another, then society almost has no other choice but to decline, because our civilization throughout all of history has hinged on those key elements. Those are the things that have allowed us to get to where we are today, but now those things are being stripped from us because social media and the internet has kind of taken over, and it's replaced all of those human-to-human interactions. And it has also allowed a lot of negativity to be injected into our lives, because now all of the bad stuff that's going on in the world, we have direct access to. So if you live on social media, or you live in the mainstream media, and that's all you see, or if that's most of what you see, then chances are you're going to be seeing a lot of very negative stuff. And the bad part about that is that that's what most people gravitate towards. The bad stuff gets the clicks, it gets the views, it keeps people interested because it elicits a very strong emotional response. And yes, that emotional response is very negative, so you would think that it would repel people away, but it does the opposite. It draws people in, because the emotional response of anger and fear is much stronger than the emotional response of positivity and happiness, and that's just a fact. So chances are, if there's negative stuff that you're seeing in your algorithm, the algorithm is going to keep feeding you that stuff, because it knows that's what gets people to watch. That's what gets people to comment. And these apps are 100% designed to keep you on them as long as possible. So whatever does that, the app doesn't care. It's going to feed you the thing that keeps you on the platform the longest. And in most cases, it's going to be the negative content, the brain-rotting content, the stuff that we probably shouldn't be looking at. Because again, when we're looking at that stuff, it breeds negativity. It makes our lives miserable. It makes us think that everything is bad and there's nothing good in the world, and the world is falling down and crumbling all around us. But is that really what's happening? That's what we're trying to find out here. And another thing that ties into that is technology related, is AI. This is very new, but it is quickly taking over our lives. It is taking our jobs away, and it is taking away our ability to think critically and to think for ourselves, because a lot of people are now using AI to think for them. And that is a very bad thing, because there's already been a lot of studies out there that shows that when you rely on these applications and on this technology to think for you, then it reduces gray matter in your brain. It causes your brain to atrophy, and all of these fundamental skills and things that I would say that make us human are now suddenly being stripped from us. These are the things that have gotten us to this point. The sophistication, our intelligence, and our intellect is what sets us apart from all the other species on this planet. And as AI becomes much bigger, which it is going to for sure within the next 5 years, then we are going to become more reliant on it. It's going to take over more of our lives, and it's going to cause us to lose those fundamental aspects of what it means to be human. And as AI grows, the infrastructure for AI also needs to grow. And that is another thing over the next 5 years that is going to happen. There are going to be many, many more AI data centers installed all over the country and all over the world. And these AI data centers consume an astronomical amount of power and water. So much so that one data center can consume more power and more water than hundreds of thousands or millions of households. And that's a bad thing, because that is going to drive up and has already driven up the cost of water and the cost of electric. And they are predicting that within the next 5 years, the cost of these things could go up as much as 30-some%. So the people that are already struggling to make ends meet, it's going to be much harder for them. And I would say it's going to be much harder for people in general. So with all these things happening around us, it's not hard to see how we might be facing a societal or economical collapse in the very near future. But the most important thing that I think we all need to understand is that all of these things, every single thing that we just talked about, is 100% a choice. And don't get me wrong, there are some aspects of this that are out of our control. The cost of things, that's kind of out of our control. The wages, how they haven't gone up, that's kind of out of our control. Some of the other things in our economy are kind of out of our control, but there are things within those realms that are in our control. And we're going to get into those in a second, but another very important thing that I think we all need to realize is that by believing that there's going to be a societal collapse, and that by believing that there's division and all this bad stuff is happening, we are essentially manifesting our destiny. And I don't want to get too far out there with this and make this all woo-woo, but there is something to be said about the things that we believe and the things that we focus on, where we put our minds and where we put our energy. Because when we believe all this bad stuff is going on, that is the energy that we put into the world, and that is essentially what our reality becomes. And that is 100% a fact. If you think about living your life in a very negative mood, and all you see is darkness, and there's a dark cloud around you no matter where you go, then your life is going to reflect that. But if you smile and you see positivity in the world around you, and you can make light of even the darkest of times, that becomes your reality, and you become a happy person. And in most cases, when you're happy and you're more positive, your health and everything else about your life is going to improve. And again, that is also 100% a fact. There is a very real phenomenon that has been studied, and it is called the global consciousness. And with the global consciousness, there is also this thing that is called a random number generator. And over the years, there have been major worldwide events that have happened. And when these events happen and they impact our lives in such a significant way, and that's all people can focus on, that random number generator goes from being random to being fixed on a certain number. And that is because what they're finding is that our consciousness and the things that we focus on can actually influence the world around us. And in that case, it caused things to no longer be random. Things became fixed, and they were fixed because us as a society, as a collective mind, were fixed on an idea. And this has happened numerous times since the inception of this random number generator. And what I truly believe is happening is that by us focusing on the downfall of society and believing that this is going to come and that there's no way to escape, we are breeding that into existence. We are 100% influencing the world around us and creating that reality for ourselves. And I truly believe that is exactly what is happening, because that mindset is creating negativity. It's creating fear. It's creating a scarcity mindset. We believe that money is scarce now, and we believe all these bad things are happening, so we withdraw from society. We don't go out and we don't socialize. We don't spend money, so that's less money going into the economy. We don't take risks anymore because we're all scared. There are so many things that we are doing because we believe these things are true, and the things that we are doing are 100% feeding into the potential downfall and collapse of society as we know it. And really stop and take a second to think about this, because this is not coincidence. All of these things are happening because we're focusing on it. And we are focusing on it because all these people out there are telling us that's what we need to be focusing on. And social media and the internet has allowed us to be able to put that type of information out there and feed these agendas and push these ideologies and this propaganda, and we adopt that. We look at it, we view it, and that is what spreads. Again, negativity spreads because that's the stuff we're looking at. That's the stuff that gets views and gets clicks and keeps us on the platforms and feeds the algorithm. But think about life and how much different it would be if none of us had access to the internet or social media or the mainstream media right now at this very second. You and I would have no idea that there was a problem in society. Yes, we might go out and we might buy food, and maybe it's going to be more expensive. Maybe our utilities and our electric bills and things like that are going to be increased, and we will notice that. But outside of that, we would have no idea that any of this stuff is going on. We only know it's going on because the algorithm is feeding that to us. And because it's feeding that to us, and we feed into it, and we put our energy into that, we are then in turn feeding our reality and manifesting it. And our future is going to be exactly what we create for ourselves. It is because we have adopted these ideas and we've let these things influence and impact the way we live our lives that these things are happening. But now that we know that, it should be very easy to understand that if we want things to trend in the opposite direction, and we want to create a more positive world for ourselves that is not going to collapse, maybe all we need to do is the opposite of what we're doing right now. Maybe instead of listening to all this crazy stuff that's going on in the world around us, maybe we need to tune that out. And instead of letting these things dictate the way we live our lives, maybe we just need to live our lives in a way that's true to us, in a way that allows us to create at least a reality around ourselves that we want to live in, because it is very possible to do that. And the best thing about that is that that reality that you create for yourself, it bleeds into society. It affects other parts of the world around us, and it might be a very small part, but it is something. It is something better than allowing this negativity and all this bad stuff to control us. So instead of feeding this negative energy, we should all be focused on injecting as much positive energy into the world around us as we possibly can. Quell the division, realize that money is not scarce, and the people at the top know that. They essentially treat money like it's monopoly money, so why shouldn't we? And instead of buying into this consumerism mindset and buying all this materialistic crap that we don't need and blowing all of our hard-earned money, maybe we need to do the opposite of that so that we can save money. Because as this agenda continues and as more people continue to talk about this, it's going to be more stressful on more people. But I think it's fundamentally important to understand that we 100% can influence the world around us just by simply doing the opposite of what we are told we should be doing. And at some point we have to ask ourselves, are we just going to stand by and allow society to collapse all around us? And are we going to contribute to that by feeding into this negative mindset and this idea that things are going to go south? Or are we going to stand up and fight until the bitter end? Because no matter which way this turns out, if we did something other than just sitting back and watching the country crumble around us, at least we can say we tried.